The Palestinian Foreign Ministry welcomes Turkey's arrest warrants for 37 Israeli officials. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says talks with the United States cannot resume. And U.S. airlines cancel 1,330 flights as the government shutdown strains air traffic control staffing.
And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just want to thank you very much. It was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful, and very, very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate, and you are a great leader. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way. But he's a great president, and I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. Thank you very much.
And Egypt has dispatched its 68th Zaid al-Izza from Egypt to Gaza aid convoy to Gaza. The convoy carried around 8,000 tons of supplies, including 280,000 food baskets, 185 tons of flour, and over 2,700 tons of medical and relief goods, and more than 1,200 tons of petroleum products. The Zaid al-Izza from Egypt to Gaza convoy, launched on July the 27th, has consistently delivered thousands of tons of food, medical supplies, and fuel to support the Palestinian population. The Palestinian Health Ministry has launched a 10-day catch-up vaccination campaign in Gaza targeting children under 3, aiming to reach those who missed the essential doses during the war. Conducted in coordination with the UNRWA and the Palestine Red Crescent Society and supported by the UNICEF and the WHO, the campaign involves around 150 health centers across the Gaza Strip. It will unfold in 3 phases, each spaced a month apart. The ministry urged families to cooperate with medical teams, stressing that vaccination is the first and last line of defense against epidemics and diseases that threaten children's lives. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has hailed Turkey's decision to issue arrest warrants for 37 Israeli officials over crimes committed in Gaza, describing it as a step in the right direction towards achieving justice. In a statement on X, the ministry called the move a victory for the principles of justice and a rejection of the policy of impunity, and that has long shielded Israel from accountability. And according to Istanbul's prosecutor's office, those named include Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, and Army Chief Eyal Zamir. Palestine urged the international community to follow Turkey's lead and take concrete measures to hold Israeli leaders accountable. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has reported that over the past 24 hours, 1 person was killed and 5 others wounded amid ongoing Israeli attacks in Gaza. 6 bodies were recovered and taken to hospitals, though some victims remain trapped under rubble and in areas inaccessible to ambulance and civil defense teams. Since the ceasefire began on October the 11th, a total of 241 Palestinians have been killed and 619 wounded, with 528 bodies recovered. Overall casualties since October the 7th, 2023, stand at 69,176 killed and 170,690 wounded. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says identification of a body received via the Red Cross will begin immediately after Hamas said the remains were those of Officer Hadar Golden. At a cabinet meeting, Netanyahu said Israel has received human remains through the ICRC and that forensic identification starts at once. Hamas earlier claimed the body is that of Hadar Golden, an Israeli army officer killed in the 2014 Gaza war. Officials have not released a confirmed ID pending examination, and the transfer comes amid broader exchanges under the ceasefire framework, with families awaiting definitive results from the National Forensics Institute. And for more analysis, we now move to Mark Summers in our newsroom. Thank you. Hi, Mark.
Thank you very much, Selma. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Now we cross over to Ahmed Fouad Anwar, who's joining us from Cairo. He's an Israeli affairs researcher. Thank you very much for being here with us. So it's Egypt's 68th aid convoy. Is this helping to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza?
Okay, good evening to you. Yeah, the crisis is worsening, especially with the winter upcoming, and Israel still is hindering aid delivery and have conditions to allow it. And they, as we know, they want to divide the Gaza Strip to east and west. And yeah, after the resistance have held their end of the deal and handed over the bodies of the detained Israelis and tried to implement the ceasefire agreement fully, even though there were Israeli violations. So I think it is time to start phase 2 of the ceasefire agreement that Trump has proposed. And yeah, in this context, we need the early healing and reconstruction meeting that is upcoming.
And what challenges would you say that the Palestine vaccination campaign might face amid this ongoing conflict?
Of course, the Israeli aggression and the Israeli violations hinder the health ministry and the vaccination campaigns, and the children are the most suffering now. And yeah, the Israeli occupation forces have heavy arms and weapons that can eradicate everyone who's in the region. And yeah, we have seen that there are ordinance that hasn't bombed yet, and now they are hindering aid delivery, medical aid delivery, and the hospitals.
And we were just hearing from Selma there about these arrest warrants that Turkey has issued for Israeli officials. Do you think this will go in any way towards accountability?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, now we have the arrest warrants, and there are we have some names, and there are ones that will be surprised when they go to Argentina, and yeah, they will be held accountable from national courts. And yeah, now they are threatened, and as you know, there are officials that are going on tourist tours, and yeah, they will be surprised to find their names on these arrest warrants. And yeah, as we have seen, they have issued some names, and they even have and they are also holding accountable the current Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Now, we also, despite the ceasefire, have continued Israeli attacks in Gaza. How is this affecting civilians, infrastructure, and how is it affecting the ceasefire?
All the efforts efforts, or everyone is putting efforts to implement the ceasefire and start the second phase, but the Israeli side are hoping to put more conditions and to reap more benefits that they haven't reached in the war, and they are trying to do the same in Lebanon. We have seen that there are violations from one side, the Israeli side, and now Israel is aiming to have the scenario in Gaza the same. And so yeah, even though there are efforts, but still there are soldiers at the yellow line, and they are hindering a delivery and the resistance work.
Well, that was Israeli Affairs researcher from Cairo, Ahmed Fouad Anwar. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. And now back to you, Selma, in the studio.
Thank you, Mark. And the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the UNRWA, has said its operations in Gaza remain ongoing despite Israeli legislation banning international staff from entering the enclave. And UNRWA's Director of External Relations, Tamara El-Rafai, said that 12,000 Palestinian staff have not stopped working on the ground while international colleagues manage humanitarian operations remotely. El-Rafai added that the ban and the inability to liaise directly with Israeli authorities have severely hampered daily logistics and the agency's ability to deliver life-saving assistance across Gaza. UNESCO's 43rd General Conference in Samarkand has unanimously approved 4 resolutions backing Palestine, and they focus on Jerusalem, Gaza, the UNRWA's educational programs, and the protection of cultural and educational institutions in occupied territories. PLO official Ali Abu Zohri called the decisions a victory for Palestinian diplomacy, emphasizing their role in safeguarding education, culture, and heritage. Resolutions include urgent aid for Gaza, protecting Jerusalem's old city, and supporting schools, higher education, and students with disabilities. The Arab, Islamic, and other delegations welcomed the measures. UNICEF has stated it is working to return all 650,000 school-aged children in Gaza to classrooms and in-person learning, describing the task as immense. Tess Ingram, a spokesperson for the UN Children's Agency, said the UNICEF needs additional space to resume education, stressing the importance of clearing the massive rubble covering much of Gaza and ensuring that unexploded ordnance no longer threaten children's safety. She added that temporary classrooms must be built and damaged schools repaired to make learning possible again. Palestinian prisoners groups has reported Israeli forces detained 442 Palestinians across the occupied West Bank, including Jerusalem, in October 2025. And among those arrested were 3 women and 33 children. The Commission of Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs, the Palestinian Prisoners Society, and El Damir Prisoners Support and Human Rights Association said most detentions occurred in the Bethlehem Governorate, and raids were often accompanied by field interrogations and assaults by the Israeli settlers, contributing to the rise in arrests. And 4 weeks into a fragile ceasefire violated daily by Israeli forces, the devastating environmental toll of Israel's assault on Gaza is becoming clearer. And across the besieged enclave, entire neighborhoods lie in ruins, and the very land and water sustaining life are now poisoned. In Gaza City's Sheikh Radwan neighborhood, a once vibrant community has become a toxic wasteland. A former rainwater pond, once vital for residents, is now contaminated with sewage and debris, turning a lifeline into a deadly hazard. For many displaced families, the polluted site has become their only refuge, an emblem of a humanitarian and environmental catastrophe that deepens by the day. Palestinian detainees held in Israel's Ofer prison are enduring daily abuse and inhumane conditions. And according to the Palestinian Commission of Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs, prisoners in Ofer prison's Gilad section face severe overcrowding, lack of basic hygiene supplies, and are forced to bathe in cold water using dishwashing liquid. Food is scarce and many sleep on the floor with a single blanket. And the Commission says Israeli guards routinely raid cells, punish detainees for minor actions, and subject them to beatings, isolation, and electric shocks. Israeli settlers have raised Israeli flags along a road between Nablus and Ramallah amid a surge in settler violence against Palestinians across the occupied West Bank. And earlier today, settlers carried out 2 separate attacks, wounding at least 7 Palestinians. And the incidents follow a report from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, which recorded October as the most violent month since documentation began in 2006, with an average of 8 settler attacks per day. And moving on to Lebanon, where a Lebanese civilian was killed after an Israeli drone targeted a vehicle on El Sawana Khirbet Selm Road in southern Lebanon. And the Lebanese Ministry of Public Health confirmed that the strike hit a civilian car in the Bint Jbeil area. And the attack followed a series of Israeli drone flights and missile strikes across southern Lebanon, including over Tyre, Nabateya, and Bint Jbeil. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that there is currently no possibility of resuming negotiations with the United States, citing a lack of a constructive approach from Washington. And Araghchi added that talks could be considered in the future if the U.S. is ready for negotiations on an equal footing to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. His comments came amid rising tensions over Iran's nuclear program, U.S. sanctions, and Tehran's involvement in regional conflicts. Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan visited displaced families from El Fasher in El Daba after the city's fall 2 weeks ago triggered a new wave of displacement. Burhan toured a camp sheltering people who fled El Fasher and nearby areas as aid groups report mounting needs across northern state. The fall of El Fasher handed the RSF control of all 5 Darfur state capitals and parts of the south, driving more than 80,000 people from their homes in recent days. And officials say priority needs include food, water, medical supplies, and protection for new arrivals as movements continue towards safer northern corridors. The Kremlin has stated that President Vladimir Putin has not issued any instructions to begin preparations for nuclear tests. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov emphasized that any decision would require careful assessment and justification. And Peskov noted that Putin has repeatedly reaffirmed Russia's commitment to the nuclear test ban. However, he added that if another country such as the United States were to conduct nuclear tests, Russia would respond to maintain strategic parity. Addressing claims by the U.S. President Donald Trump about alleged ongoing nuclear tests, Peskov stated that neither Russia nor China are currently testing nuclear weapons. Russia has reported continued strikes on Ukrainian troops in Pokrovsk in Donetsk, claiming to have repelled Ukrainian attempts to advance northward. And in Kupiansk, Kharkiv region, Russian forces said they thwarted two Ukrainian relief offensive on encircled troops. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian forces launched 69 attacks in the Pokrovsk direction, but Ukrainian troops held their positions, with fighting ongoing in several areas. Ukrainian units also repelled 4 Russian assaults on settlements in Kupiansk. U.S. airlines have canceled 1,330 flights today, the second day of federally mandated reductions, as the government shutdown continues to strain air traffic control staffing. The FAA ordered a 4% reduction in daily flights at 40 major airports starting Friday, citing safety concerns due to unpaid and absent controllers. Reductions are set to increase to 6% on Tuesday and 10% by November the 14th. Flight delays are mounting nationwide, with more than 5,400 delays reported on Saturday, following thousands earlier in the week. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned that further absenteeism could prompt a 20% cut in air traffic. The shutdown, now its 39th day, has left 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 security personnel working without pay. And lawmakers remain deadlocked over funding and healthcare disputes. And head of the British Armed Forces, Richard Knighton, has stated Britain is sending personnel and equipment to Belgium to help tackle disruptive drone activity over airports and military bases. Knighton said the Belgian military had requested assistance, which the UK is providing alongside NATO allies. He stressed that the source of the drones is not yet confirmed, though Russia has been linked to a pattern of hybrid warfare in recent years, a claim Moscow denies. Knighton also highlighted the need for the UK to modernize its forces and remain warfighting ready, noting the government's unprecedented planned increase in defence spending.
Have been sighted over their military bases, and the UK, alongside our other 31 allies in NATO, will work to support each other, and that's why the Defence Secretary and I are very happy.
Rodrigo Paz Pereira was inaugurated as Bolivia's president, inheriting an economy described as on the verge of death and a high national debt. And a centrist from the Christian Democratic Party, Pez pledged to tackle the crisis, defend the most vulnerable, and work with the opposition to build the country's future. His election ends nearly 2 decades of leftist rule, with his supporters celebrating in Murillo Square. The inauguration also marked renewed diplomatic ties with the United States, as the Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Lando, confirmed plans to reestablish ambassadorial-level relations.
No es democracia. Por eso saludamos a la oposición en esta asamblea.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said renewables are now the cheapest new power in nearly every country, urging faster transition at the Belém Climate Summit. Speaking at an energy transition roundtable on the sidelines of the World Leaders Climate Action Summit in Belém, Guterres said each dollar in renewables creates 3 times more jobs than fossil fuels and called for ending roughly $1 trillion in annual fossil fuel subsidies. He pressed governments to keep 1.5 cents within reach and move from net zero to net negative over time, insisting the pathway can differ by country, but the destination must be the same, a renewables-powered world.
Even if new national commitments are fully implemented, scientists tell us that overshooting 1.5 degrees is now inevitable.
In Somalia, camel farmers are shifting to zero grazing near Mogadishu as repeated droughts and floods upend pastoralist life and force herds off traditional rangeland. And on the capital's outskirts, camels now live in purpose-built pens, fed purchased hay and collected grass rather than roaming for pasture. Owners say the move is about survival as climate extremes wipe out grazing and water sources. Operations like Better Dairy and Meat Clean Pens Daily manage feed and closely supervise milking, with larger farms producing nearly 1,000 liters of milk a day. Farmers acknowledge the cultural shift, but say controlled feeding and veterinary care are keeping herds productive despite the harsh conditions. Pope Leo has expressed solidarity with the people of the Philippines affected by a violent typhoon, offering prayers for the deceased and the injured and those displaced by the disaster. He also praised those working to build peace in conflict-affected regions and condemned recent civilian casualties, including children, the elderly, and the sick from ongoing fighting and bombings. The Pope urged a ceasefire and a commitment to negotiations as a way to honor the memory of the victims. The Japan Meteorological Agency has issued a tsunami advisory for Iwate Prefecture, urging residents to stay away from coastal areas following a magnitude of a 6.9 earthquake off the Sanrico coast. Tsunamis of 20 centimeters were recorded in Kuji and Ofenato, while Miyako and Kamaishi saw waves of 10 centimeters. Authorities reported no abnormalities at the Onegawa nuclear power plant. Several municipalities in Iwate set up evacuation centers for residents in affected areas. And scientists report what may be the largest spider web ever found, over 100 square meters inside Sulphur Cave in the Greek-Albanian border, hosting an estimated 110,000 spiders. An international team says the subterranean supercity was first spotted in 2022 and detailed in an October paper. The vast web spans more than 100 square meters and is shared by 2 cave-adapted species, genetically distinct from their surface relatives. Researchers say this is the first time typically solitary spiders have been seen forming colonies at this scale, likely sustained by dense swarms of midges living in the cave. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin, but before we wrap up, and here is a recap of the top stories making headlines this hour. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry welcomes Turkey's arrest warrants for 37 Israeli officials. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says talks with the United States cannot resume. And U.S. airlines cancel 1,330 flights as the government shutdown strains air traffic control staffing. And for more stories and live updates, do follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG. And from all of us here, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more news on Q News.